So this past year, I've led a service series on the different sources of Unitarian Universalism. Assuming everyone might not have been here for every single one of those services, I'll just sort of share them with you again. And I also want you to pay attention to the caveat that's within each one of them. I like to repeat things. I often learned that repetition is the parenthood of success. It used to be the mother of success, but it really has changed to parenthood of success now. These sources are actually written into our UUA bylaws, stating the living tradition which we share draws from many sources. And the first is, I quote, direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures and traditions, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. End quote. So again, just to be clear, a transcending mystery that asks us to destroy, deceive, or kill would not be something that we would draw from. Okay. But this is first and foremost our direct experience. How do we experience the world that we live in? How do we experience the wonder of our existence? About 20 years you can get up here and you can preach if you like, girls. That's okay. Number two, words and deeds of prophetic women and men which challenge us to confront the powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. End quote. So I've often dwelled on how do we confront with love. Now, some people have the confront part down really well. Many have the loving part down really well, but bringing them together really is what counts. And often it's that disconnectedness of those two that either leads to anger and violence or to the other extreme of complete passivity. Now, I learned of Mahatma Gandhi's nonviolent civil disobedience, which Gandhi called satyagraha, sometimes referred to as truth source or soul force. And so it really gave a deeper meaning to my understanding of this source. Gandhi said, truth, satya, implies love, and agraha means persistence or force. So, and I'm quoting here, I thus began to call the Indian movement satyagraha, that is to say the force which is born in truth and love or nonviolence, and I gave up the use of the phrase passive resistance, for there was nothing passive about what we are doing, end quote. And this, of course, leads directly to our third source, and I quote, wisdom from world's religions which inspire us in our ethical and spiritual life, end quote. This one's a fairly broad-based one. It was the transcendentalists in the early 19th century that first broadly introduced the Hindu and Buddhist scriptures and texts to America. It points to our understanding of that other religions have wisdom, and we should never limit our wisdom to only one way that we have experienced our existence. Number four, Jewish and Christian teachings, which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. End quote. Now, of course, there are some passages within the Jewish and Christian scriptures that certain denominations that shall remain nameless have used to harm people. And this is unacceptable. And liberal religion should not be indifferent to. We need to be knowledgeable and not only speak against it, but speak for the message in the scriptures of loving our neighbor, the message of the golden rule which is found in some form in every major religion. Number five, humanist teachings, quoting here, which counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science, and warn us against the idolatries of the mind and the spirit. End quote. So if you were here last week, you heard my sermon on smashing the idols. Religious humanism is the foundation for our religion, focusing on our work in this world with human participation in and interdependent with creation, which leads to our sixth source, and I quote, spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature, end quote. This source was added after the original 5. It is a source that I think resonates with many, as the environment we live in, our blue boat home, the earth, becomes more and more fragile and toxic. We've come to realize that our interdependence with it, with the world, includes needing to understand it and to learn from it, to become one with it, and to hold it sacred, for it does provide life for us. So those are the 6 sources of our living tradition. Living tradition meaning ever-changing. For as long as we live in this world and for as long as this religion exists in this world, it will be a living tradition. It will go on. It will change. It understands that revelation is ongoing. And I encourage you all to think about what sources inspire you most and why. And so I thought, in so doing, I would share with you today some of the sources that have been inspirations for me in my life. Of course, many of you by now who've been here for a while realize that the Jewish and Buddhist sources run strong within me. Judaism was a religion I was born into, and so the stories within them still hold a special connection for me. Not in the way that I was taught them as a child, but in a way that I interpreted them as an adult. Making that leap was important, and Unitarian Universalism gave me the environment to explore them with an open mind. Judaism is the source of my passion for social justice and the foundation for living a disciplined, ethical life. Buddhism, and somewhat to a lesser extent Taoism and Hinduism, were the sources I then later explored when trying to determine how I wanted to live in the world. It helped me to learn not to cling to the outcomes of my actions, but to focus on taking right actions with right intention in all that I do. My first deep understanding of Christianity, earth-based traditions, and evolutionary spirituality came through programs at a Unitarian Universalist congregation. And this August, I encourage you to attend a program. We are hosting a program led by Michael Dowd, a leading evolutionary spirituality teacher. And he's also going to be speaking about how spirituality and climate change are connected. So that'll be towards the end of August. He's a dynamic speaker, and it is when the National Climate March people will be here as well. I believe that's the 24th of August. So keep an eye out for more information about that. So in addition to more traditional religious experiences, I thought I would share with you the sources of inspiration, the people who were inspirations in my personal life. My first thought was my family, and I am going to just pull up some pictures of them. So, you know, when I was young, I have to admit, when I was young, I probably didn't think of my family as sources of inspiration, honestly. But my grandfather certainly was. You've heard me speak about stories of him as I was growing up, and he would constantly and consistently fill me up with notions that I was capable of doing anything that I put my mind to, and the notion that stayed with me throughout my life, through every life-changing, crazy idea that I had, just thinking that I could do something. Being told that every day is something that I think is something that's helpful to a person. It gets into their psyche that they are capable of doing things. Plus, as well, he taught me to be an expert gin rummy player with knocking. And you left. I made some good money in college with that skill. So the next pictures of both my grandmothers. Both of them pinched my cheeks way too much. Please do not do this to your grandchildren, okay? Please. It'll leave scars for years. So, but the one on the right, May, my father's mother, feed me whatever food I asked for whenever I wanted it. Thus, why I now equate food with love, unfortunately, when I've had to be talked to the therapist about for years, honestly.
That's okay, so does the dog.
That's right, there you go. The one on the left, my mother's mother, Lillian, was an ardent socialist, and sometimes would whisper very quietly she was once a communist. So she fed my mind with ideals of fairness and justice. A widow, raising 2 children alone, she was the most generous person that I ever knew. Generous with her time and with her money. She showed me you didn't need to have a lot to be generous. Generosity is an attitude, she would say. And she would always somehow convince me to give up my allowance for the food shelter every week, all the time. I had to get like 2 jobs as a 11-year-old just to have something, to have some money, because I was always giving money to the food shelter for her. My parents, bless them, Arthur and Helen, they brought me into this world, and for that I am forever grateful. And they prepared me for this world. They prepared me with an emphasis on education. They prepared me with exposing me to the arts and how meaningful they could be in my life. My uncle Bob, also is a true mentor to me and helped me through many difficult times. He, like his sister, my mother, taught me as well to truly enjoy life as well. And then the other thing, a very, very important lesson that I learned early in life, never to draw on an inside straight. Okay, I'm playing both. Now, my brother and sister, God bless them, they were the bane of my existence growing up. So I tried to find the most embarrassing picture of them I could find here. But now they are the blessing of my existence. Coming from a small family, they are the people in this world that if I needed something, I knew with one phone call I could get from them. My friends from the Bronx, they grew short in the Bronx. You can tell looking at that. These are the people who walked through the valley of the shadow of death with me. People from whom I learned about loyalty and courage and duty and true friendship. And of course, my wife Jan, who's here today, and I thank her. She exemplifies patience. And patience and love as I go off as like Don Quixote chasing windmills in my life. My children, who I show here at a much younger age, actually, they're now 26 and 24, but this is how I'd always like to remember them, honestly. They have, as a window, honestly, though, I have learned more about myself through them than through any other person. I was forced to determine what some of my values are. What did I want to teach them? How did I teach them? How did I deal with them? How did I raise them? These are things that forced me to think about who I was and what I was and what I wanted to share. And now next, this is my granddaughter, Scarlett Songwell, and just look at the joy on her face. And that joy always reignites the spirit within me and my hope for better things to come in the future. Again, always a reminder to keep joy in your life. Unfortunately, those drums weren't in my house, so I didn't have to deal with the noise as well. We talked about maybe some inspirational sources of inspiration, maybe on a more national scale. These two up here, F. Lee Bailey and William Kunstler, were a source of inspiration when I was young. I read Bailey's autobiography, The Defense Never Rests, when I was young. I just liked that title, The Defense Never Rests. I mean, you don't give up. You're persistent. It ties into the whole Gandhi principle of being persistent. I was just always so impressed that they would take on cases, the most difficult cases that no one else wanted to take on. They showed me that people with power had to stand with those without power if justice were ever to be realized. Of course, Martin Luther King is still a source of inspiration because he showed that in this country nonviolence could create change, and that despite being bribed and threatened, he kept to his principles and was willing to sacrifice everything for them. Nelson Mandela, who by his actions taught me that it is possible to not hate your enemy. Despite being locked up in jail for 27 years, he befriended the guards who imprisoned him, and upon his release, he not only did not seek retribution for the years of atrocity, but instead he sought reconciliation, for he knew that he needed to withhold his personal feelings for the greater good of something larger than just himself. And lastly, and I know this is going to be a little bit of a surprise for some, I mentioned Joe Namath. Now, yes, I know he's an ex-football player, owner of nightclubs, an alcoholic, a misogynist, but he had some qualities that as a young boy, and still now are sources of inspiration. First, he told children, sports figures are not to be your idols. Your parents should be your idols. So at least at some point in his life, he realized his limitations. It's something we all do need to learn eventually. We sometimes find out the hard way, but he did know that. So secondly, I think also to some degree, this explains to some degree why sports itself is a source of inspiration for me. He had belief in himself. And despite being the underdog, despite possibly not having as much skill as the other team, with daring, with teamwork and optimism, he led his team to victory when no one else thought it was possible. I also love this picture because it shows that even under tremendous pressure, he is able to remain calm and keep his composure. Something as a minister I have found to be a great skill to have. I think this is also a cautionary tale of how easily, though, heroes can fall from grace, and what was once bravado can turn into boorishness. It is why we can never take anything for granted. And lastly, I would like to say that my source of inspiration is you, this congregation, which are the people here, all of you here. You are a major source of my inspiration. First, you're calling me to be your minister. Your faith in me to be your religious leader is deeply meaningful. I honor that and work to live up to that every day that I am here. With every kind gesture, with every insightful word, with every generous act that you perform, you are a source of my inspiration. And lastly, I'd like to point to the arts as a source of inspiration. And I think it's a source of inspiration for religion as well. It didn't make it onto our list of 6. I actually took a vote a few years ago trying to add it on, but it didn't make the cut. I often like to say, though, anything secular can be sacred, as long as we use it in the right perspective. Art provides us images and possibilities of our inner longings and displays them to explore our pain, our suffering, our hopes, our dreams, and the absurdities that life presents to us. And I really want to thank the band for playing Badlands. I know it's not in the repertoire, but it has been my favorite song for many years. During the times in my life when the universe pushed back on me, these were the words that I kept going to, and these were the words that kept me going. I believe in the love that you gave me. I believe in the hope that can save me. I believe in the faith, and I pray that someday it may raise me above these badlands. Sounds a little bit like 1 Corinthians almost, if you think about it. Now faith, hope, and love abide. I don't know that that's where Springsteen was going or getting it from, but I just make that connection. So I sing the song's meaning maybe to a different tune these days, but the words still sing true. Unitarian Universalism provides the opportunity to search without judgment, to explore without a commitment to a specific outcome. I believe in the love that Unitarian Universalism provides to create such a safe space. Unitarian Universalism provides the opportunity to learn to live with hope and love in our hearts, to challenge our way of viewing the world and live out our values in the world. I believe in the hope that Unitarian Universalism provides, that one day humanity will live in a just world. This faith, Unitarian Universalism, has raised me up and changed my life in small and large ways. And I pray for the same for each and every one of you. For it is there for all of us, as Springsteen says, for the ones who have a notion deep inside, that it ain't no sin to be glad you're alive. I want to find one place that ain't looking through me. End quote. So for all the English teachers out there, I'm sorry for all the A's. But it's rock and roll, you know? Unitarian Universalism affirms that we are not born in sin, that life with all its joys and all its sorrows, life itself is the miracle. And living it and engaging fully in life is what makes life fulfilling. Unitarian Universalism is that place that doesn't look through you, doesn't overlook you, but provides an environment for you to explore and express that deep meaning in your life. For those who have walked through the valley of the shadow of death, who have struggled mightily just to get some breathing room in this world, and maybe you've been betrayed and find it hard to trust others, maybe you've been on the journey alone just too long. It's easier to walk that road with others. To paraphrase another Springsteen song, he writes, the road, and I quote, the road is dark, and it's a thin, thin line. But I want you to know, we'll walk it with you anytime. End quote. Because when the forces and the challenges of this world push against you and you need others to help you lift yourself up, you need it, and we will be there. No one does it alone. For those who hope for more, we need examples. We need models of how to overcome adversity, how to overcome the long odds. We need sources of inspiration. We need to find those models for our lives, for our congregation, and for the world. Sometimes it just seems so big, and the odds are stacked against us. But we can point to experiences where David beats Goliath, where truth overcomes falsehood, where justice is served, where compassion is a lived experience. We as a religion, as a congregation, as individuals can be that model. We can be sources of inspiration. May it be so. I'd like to now share with you a short reading by the mystic Osho. Whenever you have the opportunity to laugh, laugh. Whenever you have the opportunity to dance, dance. And whenever you have the opportunity to sing, sing. And one day you will find you will have created paradise. And so now I am inviting you to sing and clap and dance as we are going to close out with probably my favorite hymn of all, which is This Little Light of Mine. It's easy to sing. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. You say that 3 times. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Then everywhere I go, I'm going to let it shine. Building up a world, I'm going to let it shine. The words are there. I invite you to rise in body and your spirit and make some noise. Dance a little. Amen.